Hello, and welcome back to the SMSF Property Pathway. I'm your host, Jason McCall, the SMSF Property Guy. Thanks for tuning into our second episode today. We're digging into a topic that's quietly costing hardworking Aussies hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of dollars from their retirement nest egg. We're talking about the massive mathematical gap between your standard off-the-shelf super fund and what you could actually have if you take control. If you're a high-income earner, a doctor, lawyer, engineer, or a mining FIFO or resource executive, and you've got over 250,000 sitting in your super fund you haven't really looked at, this episode is for you. Okay. We're going to show you why your current strategy is what we call Dormant Capital Problem, basically a ticking time bomb of missed opportunities. Then we'll walk you through the exact SMSF property pathway that a growing number of professionals are using to get back in the driver's seat and build a future on their own terms. Okay, well, let's crunch some numbers. We'll expose the wealth gaps and give you a clear, actionable plan, ready to see where you really stand. We've put together a 60-second readiness assessment as well. This link is in the description below. Go and take it now, and let's get started. All right. What if I told you there's a hidden flaw in the standard superannuation strategy that is the single biggest reason you might fall short of your retirement goals? It's not about stock market crashes or just bad luck. It's about a basic misunderstanding of how wealth is really built. Your retail super fund has a dormant capital problem. In this episode, we're going to expose that gap and show you the exact pathway smart professionals are using right now to take back control and build a real wealth for 2026 and beyond. All right, let's start by busting the biggest myth sold to Australian professionals. The idea that your retail or industry super fund is working hard for you and that slow and steady wins the race. Look, for the average person, that might be okay advice, but for high income earners, it's a recipe for an average retirement. You're grinding out 60-hour weeks, making huge sacrifices, dutifully putting 12% of your big income into your super. You look at the balance, let's say it's 250,000, and you think, great, it's growing, but how is it growing? Your typical balanced fund aims for a return of around 7 to 8% a year over the long term. Let's be generous and call it 7% after fees. That 7% is calculated on your cash balance and nothing else. If you have 250,000 in there, you're earning a return on $250,000. There's no leverage, there's no velocity. Your capital is, for all intents and purposes, asleep at the wheel. When the market dips, your balance goes sideways or down. When inflation spikes, like it has been, the real buying power of your property is just quietly disappearing. This is what we call the dormant capital problem. Your money is just sitting in a giant pool with millions of other accounts managed by some anonymous fund manager in a Sydney or Melbourne skyscraper, and it's fundamentally being underused. For professionals, this is made worse by the late start penalty. You probably spent your 20s, maybe even your 30s at uni, racking up a huge HECS debt and just building your career. You didn't start making the big bucks until later in life. You simply don't have 40 years of the slow, unleveraged. You simply don't have 40 years for the slow, unleveraged magic of compounding to work for you. You need a different plan, one based on control and leverage. Let me show you this in real numbers. Let's imagine a professional. Well, let's call him or her Dr. Smith. She's 45, a successful surgeon, and has a super balance of around 250,000 in a standard retail fund. She's contributing regularly, but she's just a passive passenger on her own financial journey. Her fund averages a 7% return by the time she turns 60. Her super balance will be around $689,000. Now, that sounds like a lot of money, right? But is it enough to find a comfortable, tax-free retirement for the next 25 or 30 years, all while keeping the lifestyle she's worked so hard for? The short answer is no, not even close. After you factor in inflation, it's a future filled with compromise. This isn't a scare tactic, it's just math. The retail super system, for all its good intentions, is designed for the masses. It's not designed for high achievers who need to make up for lost time and get the most out of their high contribution capacities. It leaves hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table. So where does the money go? It becomes part of the great wealth divide in this country, a divide that's being fueled, ironically, by the superannuation itself. A huge chunk of all investment property value is held by the wealthiest Australian households. Their wealth is growing at a much faster rate than everyone else's. This isn't an accident. It's a result of strategy. It's the difference between being active, in control, versus just passively hoping for the best. Let's go back to our example. We have Dr. Smith with a projected $689,000 at age 60. Now, let's bring in Mr. Jones. Same age, same starting balance of $250,000, and also a high income professional. But Mr. Jones decides to stop being a passenger. He decides to become the CEO of his own retirement. He takes his $250,000 and follows the SMSF Property Pathway. He uses leverage. Let's look at the numbers side by side. This is the wealth gap, plain and simple. At year zero, both Dr. Smith and Mr. Jones start with $250,000 in super. Dr. Smith's money stays as cash in her fund. Mr. Jones, however, uses his capital to secure a $600,000 investment property inside his new self-managed super fund. His net position still is $250,000, but he now controls a $600,000 property asset. Let's fast forward 5 years. Dr. Smith's retail fund, chugging along at 7%, has grown to about $350,000. That's a pretty respectable $100,000 gain. Mr. Jones's property, assuming a conservative 6% annual growth, is now worth over $841,000. After paying down some of the loan and other costs, his net equity in the fund has jumped to over $491,000. The gap between them is already over $140,000. Let's jump ahead to year 10. Dr. Smith has now crossed the $490,000 mark. She's feeling pretty good. But Mr. Jones's property is now valued at nearly $1.2 million. His net equity has soared past $830,000. The wealth gap has now become a massive $338,000. Now, let's look at the finish line. Year 15 at age 60. Dr. Smith gets there with her $689,000. A great effort by any normal standard. But Mr. Jones arrives with a property worth over $1.65 million and a net equity position in his super fund of over $1.3 million. The gap between them is more than $615,000. This isn't magic. It's just mathematics. It's the difference between a dormant capital and an active leveraged capital. This is the 2026 wealth gap. It's the chasm between being a passive account holder and an active asset owner. You're on one side of this gap or you're on the other. There's no in between. So how do you get across this gap? How do you go from being Dr. Smith to a Mr. Jones? You have to do it by following a proven, structured process. This isn't about taking reckless risks. It's about being strategic, informed, and in control. It's the SMSF Property Pathway. Let's break it down. This is the secret sauce for the whole strategy, an LRBA. An LRBA is a special type of loan approved by the ATO that lets your self-managed super fund borrow money to buy an asset like property. Keywords here are limited recourse. This means if something goes wrong and the fund can't pay the loan, the lender can only take back that specific asset held under that loan, which is the property. They can't touch anything else in your SMSF, like your cash or your shares. It's a built-in safety net for you. Here's how it works. You set up your SMSF and you roll over your existing super. Let's say that's 250,000. You keep a buffer of around 25,000 for costs and just in case moments like maintenance. You then use the other 225,000 as a deposit to get a loan and buy a $600,000 investment grade property. Instantly, your 250,000 super balance is now controlling a $600,000 property asset. You're no longer just earning returns on your cash, you're getting the capital growth on the entire property value. You are leveraging the bank's money to build your wealth, all inside the regulated, protected bubble of your super fund. This is the single biggest key to speeding up your wealth. This is the single biggest key to speeding up your wealth creation and closing that gap. The second pillar of the SMSF Property Pathway is the ridiculously good tax treatment. The government actually designed these rules to encourage us to save for retirement, and property inside our super is one of the best ways to take advantage of them. First off, any rent your property earns is taxed at only 15% while you're still working. Compare that to paying your personal tax rate of 30%, 37%, or even 45% on rental income from a property you own in your own name. It's a huge saving that lets you pay down your loan faster and build equity that much quicker. Secondly, when you eventually sell the property, if you've held it for more than a year, the capital gains tax is capped at an effective rate of just 10%. But here's the ultimate perk, the one that really separates the insiders from the outsiders. Once you retire and switch your super fund into pension phase, two incredible things happen. The tax on your rental income drops to zero, and the capital gains, if you sell the property, is also zero. This is 100% legal, government-approved way to get tax-free income and tax-free growth in retirement. It's also worth knowing about upcoming changes. From the 1st of July 2026, a new tax called the Division 296 will add an extra 15% tax on earnings for super balances over $3 million. This makes having a stable income-producing asset like property even more important to manage your fund's growth and tax strategy. These are the rules the wealthy have used for decades. They aren't secrets. They're just not advertised by the big retail funds who want to keep your money sitting dormant in their accounts. Taking control doesn't mean you have to do everything yourself and risk a compliance nightmare. It means you act as the CEO and you get a specialist team to execute a proven plan. Our 3-phase pathway is designed to do exactly that. Phase 1 is plan. This is the foundation. We work with you and specialist advisors to get the structure right. A corporate trustee for your SMSF, a bare trust for your property, and getting all your deeds and bank accounts in order. We confirm your rollover funds and get a pre-approval for your LRBA loan. This phase is all about building the framework for success before you even start to look at properties. Phase 2 is buy. This is where most DIY SMSF investors get it wrong. You can't just buy any old property. The property has to pass the ATO's strict sole purpose test, meaning its only job is to provide retirement benefits for you. You can't live in it and your family can't rent it from you. We use our 155-point SMSF stress test, which checks everything from the building's condition and flood risk to local growth and whether it's the kind of place people want to own. We filter out the duds and find compliant investment A-grade properties that are cash flow positive from day one. This careful process takes the risk out of buying and makes sure you get a high-performing asset, not a lemon. Phase 3 is grow. Once the property is yours, the work isn't over. It's about professional management. We make sure a top-notch property manager is in place to handle the tenant. All the rent expenses have to flow through the right SMSF bank account. And crucially, we do annual audits, valuations, and strategy reviews to make sure your fund stays 100% compliant, on track to hit your retirement goals. This isn't a set and forget deal. It's an active process of management and tweaking with a pro team guiding you the whole way. We've covered a lot, and I bet the wheels are turning if you're starting to see the gap between where you are now and where you'd like to be. I want to give you something to help you take that next step. We've put our entire process into a 14-page PDF, the SMSF Property Acquisition Blueprint. It's a roadmap you can keep on your desk that details this whole pathway. Use the word blueprint and comment below, and we'll get that out to you straight away. Going down this path requires a lot of expertise. It's not really a weekend DIY project for a busy professional. Along the way, there are some major pitfalls that completely derail your strategy and even lead to big ATO penalties. Knowing the traps is the best way to avoid them. Here are the 5 fatal mistakes you have to sidestep. All right. Signing a contract before your setup is ready. Signing a contract to buy a property in your personal name, thinking you'll just move it into your SMS later, is a total nightmare for compliance. This can trigger double stamp duty and huge penalties. The SMSF and bare trust structures must be in place first. Number 2, buying a property that isn't compliant. An SMSF can't use borrowed money to improve a property, only to maintain it. Buying a fixer-upper that needs big renovations is a direct breach of the rules. It has to be a single acquirable asset. Number 3, using a standard mortgage broker. An LRBA is a very specialised loan. Your average mortgage broker often doesn't get the details and can give you bad advice or set up the loan incorrectly, putting your whole fund at risk. Your average mortgage broker often doesn't get the details and give you bad advice or set up the loan incorrectly, putting you and your whole fund at risk. You need a specialist SMSF lending advisor. All right, number 4, forgetting about post-settlement compliance. Setting up the fund and buying the property is just the start. The ongoing annual audits, valuations, and admin are mandatory. If you neglect these, your fund could be declared non-compliant, which can result in you losing nearly half your fund's assets in tax penalties. And number 5, trying to go it alone. The most dangerous pitfall is thinking you can do it all yourself. Being the CEO of your super means you make the decisions, but you lean on a team of specialists, a financial advisor, a tax accountant, a lawyer and conveyancer, property strategist to execute this plan perfectly. Trying to save a few $1,000s by doing it all yourself can end up costing you hundreds of thousands of dollars down the road. Avoid these pitfalls isn't about luck. It's about having the right team and the right process from day one. All right, you've seen the mathematical problem with the default super system. You've seen how big the wealth gap it creates really is. You've seen the clear 3-step pathway to get across that gap. The question isn't what's possible anymore. The question is, what are you going to do about it? If you're a professional with over $250,000 in your super and you're ready to stop leaving your retirement to chance, it's time to take that next step. If you want to explore if this pathway is right for you, we've opened up a few spots in our calendar for a complimentary 15-minute strategic property review. On this call, we won't try to sell you anything. We'll listen. We'll help you figure out where you currently stand, map out your borrowing power for an LRBA, and get clear on your financial goals. It's just a chat to give you some clarity, no strings attached. These spots fill up fast, so please click the link in the description below to book your call now and take control of your future. So let's wrap this up. The wealth gap in Australia is real and it's getting wider. For a lot of professionals, the main reason isn't their income, it's their strategy. So we've talked about 3 key ideas today. First, the Dormant Capital Problem. Your retail super fund is just an efficient vehicle that relies on slow, unleveraged growth and is costing you hundreds of thousands in potential wealth. Second, the power of leverage. by using a correctly structured LRBA inside an SMSF, you can take a modest super balance and use it to control a much larger asset, which massively speeds up your journey to financial freedom. And third, the path to taking control. This isn't some vague idea. It's a clear, engineered 3-phase blueprint: plan, buy, and grow, that turns you from a passive passenger into the CEO of your own retirement. The difference between a comfortable retirement and a truly wealthy one doesn't come from working harder. It comes from working smarter. It comes from having the right strategy and the guts to act on it. Your super is your money. It's the result of decades of your hard work and sacrifice. It's time to make it truly work for you. Thanks for joining me today on the SMSF Property Pathway. Don't forget to take the readiness assessment and book your strategic review. We'll leave links in the description below. Subscribe, us 5 stars, and share this episode with a friend or colleague who's still stuck in the wealth gap slow lane. My next time, we'll be doing a deep dive into how busy executives execute SMSF property acquisitions without flying interstate. I'm Jason McCall, the SMSF property guy. Your pathway to a property-powered retirement starts right here. Till next time.